Cool. So, hey, hello everyone. Thanks all for coming quite in some numbers here. So, see if I do a good job. I'll jump right into it because there's not too much time. So, yeah, let's get into it. 1 second. Okay, now it does. So, yeah, my talk, as you said, is not about writing code. I think it's quite a little refreshment if you saw a lot of technical talks. It's more about teams, more of the inner workings, how teams function, how we at Buffer basically, especially in a mobile team, but you can refer that to any other team if you want to, went from a disconnected to a more engaged and happy team. How we basically went from this to this. But to be serious, we also dress up and we do things together so we don't look ridiculous every time. So just a quick note, if you're a freelancer, please still stay. This can still be valuable for you. If you work with other teams, external teams, with agencies, or still in open source, you can still make something of that your own and use it for yourself. So yeah, hi, I'm Marcus. I'm the mobile lead at Buffer. My job is basically to make the work of iOS and Android team at Buffer hurdle and stress-free so they can do their job. I've worked as an iOS and Android engineer for over 6 years. I've worked on my own apps with clients and agencies. And 2.5 years ago, I joined Buffer as an iOS developer. And then last year, there was kind of a need where a reorg was happening, and there was a need for the mobile team to be kind of more involved into everything in the whole organization and to have someone to help with that. So this talk is kind of a little bit my journey, how I went from engineer to manager, how I discovered what it meant to not just write code, but to help others write great code and build cool apps. How basically we keep the team together engaged and successful. So this doesn't, I don't want this to be a sales talk, but it's important to understand how Buffer works, because that is a big influence in the culture and our happiness. There are 2 ways to know Buffer. You can either know it through product or through our culture. I give a very quick intro to that, so you have all the context to everything. So Buffer's vision is kind of to help people build their businesses using social media and to create the workplace of the future. So we built those 3 products. One is more senior, the others are quite new. And our job as the mobile team is kind of help those teams build mobile apps and share our mobile knowledge with them. On the other hand, we have our culture and our values, which we are quite known for. Those are our values. Some of you might have seen them, I'm not sure. They kind of help us, guide us through our decisions. I'm going to mention a couple of them later. I'm going to use them because we do use them in our company. We don't treat that as a religion, but yeah, as I said, we use them as a guideline. One I wanted to highlight, I'm going to mention again, is transparency, which Buffer is also quite known for. We do kind of share everything, externally, internally. We have all our numbers, most of our decisions. Internally, everyone gets every email if you want. You can look at notes and documents you want to see. Everything is there if you want it to be. Another important fact to mention is that we're a fully distributed company. That means we're 70 people all over the world in almost, not 70, but a lot of different cities. So that takes all those changes you need to do to create a great team to another level. It also has, of course, good things, which I'm going to mention, but I want you to remember that we don't have an office. We don't just can go to our colleagues and just chat to them or hang out with them. So I want to be mindful of that we all know that. So yeah, this all seems quite good, right? So why do we need to focus on a happier team, and why especially mobile in our use case? You have to understand that for Buffer, it was started as a web-only tool, as some of the SaaS tools are. The API was built while the iOS app was being built as a startup. You do things quite quickly. So it was never a mobile-first approach to it. But that's OK. Not everything needs to be. And this talk will kind of touch a little bit on team building and also how we build still great products and how we went from no mobile-first to a team where web and mobile is kind of considered equal players. Due to that, in the beginning, the purpose wasn't really clear for the mobile team. We became a little bit disconnected to the rest of the org. iOS was doing its thing. Android was doing its thing. Not a big team feeling, not in mobile, not from mobile to the engineering or to the other product teams. So we're kind of floating around a little bit. If we would have had a roadmap, it would have been very reactive, not really proactive. Did something change on web? Do we need to fix something which they changed, I don't know, 2 weeks back? There was no real conscious decision made to work on something especially for mobile. So we were kind of a copy of our web tool that might be good for certain tools, but not for everything. So we were kind of like this little guy. Did we miss something? Are we too late? Trying to listen and look out for changes, always kind of looking on changes on the web API, like, oh, do we need to do something on on mobile? So other product teams were never really involved. That made coordination pretty hard. So we said, or I said, something needed to get better and to change. I consider 3 things I found through my journey through this they had quite an immense impact on how our team was connected and how it worked. First thing, build a happy team, as we already heard. Second one, live smarter, not harder. And the third one, be a no-ego doer. I'm going to touch on each of those points now a little bit, so we can all learn a little bit more about those. Build a happy team. As I said, for us, that actually meant build a happy remote team. So what does that actually mean? What is a happy team? Do we smile each day even if we don't want to? Do we fake it and say, oh, everything is okay? We actually don't. We try to not do that. That part is called artificial harmony, and we're actively working against that. So some of you might ask, what is artificial harmony? So to give you a very simple example, which happened to me, and I bet to most of you, did you ever walk out of a meeting where you messaged someone afterwards who wasn't at meeting and saying to him something you weren't feeling uncomfortable, weren't feeling comfortable saying in front of everyone? I think most of us did, and that feeling is especially called artificial harmony, when you pretend everything is okay in front of the group and then go back and say something else. It basically refers to a team without a healthy conflict. And a healthy conflict is nothing else than a passionate, unfiltered debate around an issue of importance to your team. And teams who don't have who have artificial harmony, they tend to not have a conflict at all. And I think it's not a very good sign for a good team. There's a very great quote by Patrick Lencioni. He touches a lot of that in his book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, where it says, great teams do not hold back with one another. They're unafraid to air their dirty laundry. They admit their mistakes, their weaknesses, and their concerns without a fear of reprisal. So some of those parts, they sounded like us in Buffer a little bit. We were trying to be gentle and kind every time. We even have choose positivity in one of our values. So can we actually share this critique with someone? Can we speak up, or should we just hold it down? So we're trying to actively work against that and embrace also not being happy. That ultimately means being a much more productive and happy team. Okay, so now that we touched artificial harmony, what is a team? The definition of a team is pretty straightforward, and we all probably heard it. A team is a group of individuals working together to achieve a goal. Pretty straightforward. Now we know what team is. What is happy? Happy can be a very subjective thing, and my definition is my own, in my own context. So what I tell you, you probably won't agree, or maybe agree for only some parts. So make your own definition of happy, because it depends on all your context. For me, it means basically happiness is about being able to combine pleasure, passion, and purpose in one's personal life. Again, it might be slightly different for everyone, but that's fine. There's also another kind of a definition, a quote by Albert Schweitzer. It says, success is not the key to happiness, but happiness is the key to success. If you love what you're doing, you'll be successful. So happiness can be a good recipe for success, I guess, if he said that. I think it's not the full truth. We're all human. We make errors. We fail. There's not always only success involved. But I think taking parts from that and all the artificial harmony and the definitions we had, and I would say that a great functioning team is much more worth than a product. I think a great team with no artificial harmony, with a lot of psychological safety, they feel bonded. In my opinion, they can tackle whatever comes their way. Cool. Now that we know a little bit more about happy teams, how can you understand where your team is at right now? Can you measure it? Again, it's a very subjective thing, so it's still something you might need to figure out a little bit for yourself and for your own team. But again, it's also not as easy as you might measure speed and efficiency with your team, because that's something you use to judge your team's productivity and how it's performing. Again, happiness is unpredictable. You can't kind of always predict it, but embrace it. We use something called Office Vibe. It's kind of a Slack bot. Slack is our office, basically. And it kind of gives you a pulse on your current team. So this is just a snapshot from last week's metrics, where you get like an overview as a team lead, and you check it out and see kind of what's currently the vibe. It's not an ultimate truth-telling tool, but it gives you kind of a feeling where the areas are where you might need to work on, or where it's going good. You can ask custom questions to feel for a certain area. But again, it's not an ultimate truth-telling tool. You shouldn't only rely on this, but it definitely helps you in understanding, like, OK, how's the team doing? Cool. Now that we know how we can measure it, how can we influence it? Well, probably a lot of you are going to ask. I think the biggest thing for me, for us at Buffer, is culture. And by culture, I don't mean we have football tables and Friday beers, first, because we're remote, and secondly, because that's not what I mean. I mean culture as a safe environment where you can be yourself, where you can ask questions, make mistakes, and grow. For us, being remote, culture is kind of, those are our roots. This is where we base everything on. So if we don't have a great culture, being a remote team kind of doesn't really work too well, at least for us. And also with culture, creating values is a huge factor in making a team more happy. This could be a whole nother separate talk, so I can't go too deep into this one. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff on our blog or in general on the internet to check out. Also, the remote part, of course, where you live and work, that kind of contributes to how happy and how fulfilled you are in your life. For us, of course, being a fully distributed company, it contributes to how happy our team is. And on my team, I have a dad who has like 2 children and the next one coming, and he's super happy to be at home when this happens. It's so important for people who have family, who have people maybe they need to care for, like grandparents or any other relatives they need to care for. So if people can live where they're the most happiest, I mean, why wouldn't that contribute also to their work life? The next part, I think, is also very important, is purpose. I mean, the definition of a team already says that a team is a group of individuals working towards a goal. So I think a team needs to have a goal, and especially one where they have input into setting. We are all developers, as the conference says, so we like to solve problems, right? We don't want an instruction manual and how to solve things. So yeah, having something to work towards is definitely contributing to how a team is feeling. To give you an example, what we did at Buffer there is, it's very simple. It's a mobile vision we created for our team. If you read it, it doesn't say any weird or crazy things. It just helps us to have a North Star where we can work towards. So I'll leave it here for a second so you can read it. So it's not something crazy. It just helped us to have it written and to have it to work towards. So. To show you the reaction, it's anonymous because it wasn't a review, but what one of our developers said is that this is huge for us because it helps solidify what we are about over on mobile and how we get things done. We haven't had something like that before, so it's super exciting. So I think it's quite obvious what having a mobile vision did to the team. Another factor is trust. I think teams need to be trusted. They need to make their own decisions. And they need to feel comfortable experiencing and learning from their own decisions. They need to also trust each other. We are also, as developers or other team members, we need to feel comfortable to hand over our Legos to someone else who might be better suited to fix that one bug or to add that feature. There's one thing you can also influence trust a little bit, and as I mentioned before, this is transparency. For me, like becoming a manager, this was the most, I think, important thing I did to just continue to be open and honest. I think, yeah, until now, that was the most impactful thing I did for myself, for my career, but also for the team. And because also our CEO says that transparency breeds trust, and trust is the foundation of great teamwork. Last but not least, how you can influence your happiness is, of course, have fun. I mean, we're all in there. We all need to work for a long time. Why not? Why shouldn't it be fun? Be optimistic, embrace failure, and laugh more. Laughter deflates conflict when a moment becomes maybe too serious. Laughter invites participation and draws teams closer together. Laughter leads to creativity, and let's be honest, laughter is also serious business. Cool. Now that we've went through the first one, let's go over to the next step. Live smarter, not harder. I know this may sound nice. It also may sound a bit cheesy. Oh, this is just motivational speak. Live smarter, not harder. Does it actually work? I can say it's not just marketing speak. It does work under the right circumstances if you approach it in the right way. If you're still not with me, let's consider the alternative. So what's the alternative in today's startups world, or like motivational quotes and stuff like that? You see stuff like that. Nobody cares, work harder. I'd rather hustle 24/7 and slave 9 to 5. Only cure for the struggle is to hustle. I had images in there, but I was afraid that could be some rights issues, so that's why I copied it. So I didn't invent those. They exist. But if we would like consider this to be the true thing to do, I think we would all end up like this little guy, and would all be just tired at the end of our day and be like, yeah, okay, I can't anymore. So I think nobody here really wants to work an 18-hour day or something like that and force ourselves to suffer through our work. So I don't think so either. And no matter what goal you want to achieve, I think that making things hard on yourself won't bring you anywhere near to that goal. You should, I think, in our case, we should still challenge ourselves. Of course, we need to work and we do need to do things, but nobody said that breaks in between 20-minute walks or naps, we all know they do wonders to our productivity, and sometimes even just sleeping over that bug fix a night, the next morning you wake up and you have the fix right there. So why do we need to force ourselves to like suffer through work? Of course, there are also technical things. I won't go too deep into those technical things because I all know you might know more about those things, but continuous integration, just adding that to a small team where you sometimes think, yeah, it's not worth it. Add it, because even the smallest little things you can take out of your work life to make your work life a little bit stressless is kind of very, very important. It helps you in automating things, and you all know more about continuous integration. It is useful even if you're a small team. We use Bitrise and Danger in our mobile team. Danger, I don't know if you know that, but it's a cool tool to help you even with common code review chores, like commenting or saying something about a certain file or something. So you can really write your own rules, and it even helps in the smallest tiny little tasks. Of course, similar to continuous integration tests, I'm not sure, again, there's much more to say about that, but from my own experience, I can tell you that they save your life. Especially at Buffer, sometimes we have those small little areas where we need to do fast-changing things, because if you look at it, depending on 6 social networks, they do weird stuff. They do bring out things, or they do remove things from the API, so we need to move fast. And sometimes we break things, of course, but having UI and unit tests in our apps really relieves those small stresses, because you know it will be tested, and they will remind me of if I forgot something. So what that all comes down to is quality. It is important to not break things continuously and to focus on quality, because it will ultimately make your life easier in the future and your life stress-free. So keep advocating for it. It's not always possible, I know that from experience, but it's important to bring up. It's easier for future features and future hires you might have in your team. I know it's not always understood. I know it's hard to say, but it's super important to prevent tech debt, because ultimately you're going to pay it somehow. Advocate it to your teammates, to your stakeholders, to your managers, because otherwise it will ultimately hurt your team, your product, your metrics, and yeah, ultimately the money you make. So while you advocate for that, you need to learn to say no sometimes. It won't always be easy, but it's important. Again, work on it to try and say that sometimes when you think it's worth mentioning. It's like exercising a muscle. You need to force yourself to, should I? Yeah, you should mention it. If it doesn't work, it's fine, but try and exercise it. It can have a big impact if you're saying it at the right moment. Now, of course, you have to have the right intentions. We all can't say no to work, because then it's like, yeah, it would all be for nothing. So this became quite interesting for us at Buffer 2. We didn't really have a product process. We had a lean approach at the beginning, as probably most startups do. It worked well in the beginning, just one product. Not a lot of coordination needed to happen. But then the team grew, challenge became bigger. We kind of moved to a multi-product platform. Now we have more ambitious products. Our timelines grew exponentially. We were continuously trying to actually build cars first and not skateboards. So we were not shipping any small, polished features, valuable features for our user where we could have benefited from. So we needed to find something else. What we found was 6-week cycles. We kind of needed a structure with constraints that allowed us to ship polished, high-quality features, which were small enough in scope to move quickly and iterate, but also longer, less heavy than Scrum sprints. What we came up with, as I said, no, we didn't come up with it, but we found it, It's called 6-week cycles. I think Basecamp might have come up with it, but they're still using it. Intercom, probably a couple of other companies use it too. That gives us enough time to build useful, high-quality features, provide us with a definite time limit to be smart about our priorities and our trade-offs we need to make. And it focuses on a cadence of work. It's not a sprint, so it works well with our live smarter, not harder value. Yeah, as you can see, basically start the 6-week cycles. We have planning meetings, mini retros, and you adapt as you need. And the cool part, which I'm going to mention in the next slide, is the in-between weeks, because after every 6 weeks, you have 2 in-between weeks. And what you do there is very interesting. It's becoming a space for focused engineering and product planning, but it's also a breathing time for engineers to work on side projects or pure engineering work. It also takes out the pressure of that constant sprint you have with Scrum sprints, where you feel it's kind of unsustainable to always just go and go. Because if we're honest, sprinting, you can't sprint all your life. You kind of need to slow down a little bit. So you can maybe work on refactoring, as I mentioned before. You can rewrite something to be more reliable or more scalable, or add more accessibility to your app or your product, or performance updates, or even work on small little side projects to add to the product to flex your muscles in design or product skills. So what I want to leave you with is, if you want to live smarter, not harder in your work life, is I think do the small changes first, and yeah, definitely don't overdo it. Cool. Let's go over to the third part. I think you can start with making changes for yourself. With making changes is yourself. No ego doer for us means that we don't attach ourselves to ideas. We try to be adaptable, comfortable with making decisions. We practice humility, and we try to not have fear of failure, no turf wars or no clinging to any ideas because we have our name attached to it. We actually try to not attach our name too much to it, because we can then adapt, expand, and maybe improve upon it. Because I think due to ego, there are sometimes a lot of missed opportunities. In my opinion, the biggest one is that we as engineers are sometimes getting brought in way too late into the product decision or the product discussion. I would even say and go so far that if you're using engineering only to code, you get only half the value. Engineers, as we all know, we are here, we're sharing a lot of our ideas, are a great resource for innovation and are not always invited to the process. So what we want is a team of missionaries. Team of missionaries, they are engaged, they're motivated, they have a deep understanding of the business, they have empathy for the customer. A team of mercenaries, on the other hand, has no real sense of accountability, no passion, and no connection to the customers. Mercenaries kind of build whatever they're told to, and missionaries are true believers in the vision and are committed to the problem solving. So in general, I would say don't forget who you're building it with. That's why we're here. That's what we're talking about. For us at Buffer, our team kind of looked like this. We had, as I mentioned, Android on the one hand, iOS on the other, and then right over there we had the rest of the engineering, which was mainly web and systems. I say, as I went through it, in the mobile team itself, it's time to settle that long-lasting fight between iOS and Android. I know it's hard. I've been through it. I've been through iOS and Android. But it's important to value both at companies and not just focus on, oh, let's only do the Android or the iOS designs, or let's just show this, show both. Because I think if you also in yourself, in your own mobile team, aren't the change, you kind of don't show it to your stakeholders. Why should they care to value both if you don't in your own team? So what we actually want and what we have right now, which I'm very happy about, is we have something more like this, kind of a team working well together, not showing off much ego, and caring for each other. How do you get there? By building connections, I think, is at least one part we did. You should connect your team. They should connect with each other in whatever way you think it's easiest. Building connections, though, doesn't mean that you need to be best friends. Be friendly, be open. I mean, it's still work. We don't need to have only best friends at work, but build connections inside your own team and much more broader in the org too. I would even go so far, ignore the org chart. Ignore oh, that's a manager, or that's a exec person. It's important to build connections inside your own team and know what that person is, if you still can. I mean, depends on the company. If your company is I don't know how many thousand people, okay, that gets a bit different, but the important part happens when you're a startup, when you're a small team. So build those connections wherever they are in your company. What we are doing in the engineering team at Buffer is called Snackchats. It's kind of a small little initiative, but it definitely helps. Another way to call that would be lunch and learns. Maybe some of you have heard that. Funny fact, we are remote, so our lunches are not at the same time, so we needed to call it another way. What that means is basically on a Thursday, we have a time blocked where the whole engineering team gets together, and someone, if they want to, can share an interesting idea, a library, a tutorial, or exercise a talk they've been planning to give in like a conference. We kind of record it, everyone can see it and watch it, and we learn more about what the others are doing. And then we even record them and share them publicly now. So if you want to check out, there's the URL to one of our first ones about clean code in Android, or clean architecture in Android. There are a couple of more now, so you can also approach me later if you want to know more about that. But yeah, as I said, don't forget who you're building it with, but also don't forget who you're building it for. Because remember, happy missionary teams, they are full of true believers in the vision, and they are committed to solving problems for the customer. Because that's ultimately what you're building, right? You're building something for someone. Because I think no matter how good engineering is, if you don't have something worthwhile to build it for, it just kind of gets hard if you don't have the motivation for it. So get involved in the product process, not by forcing, but by making everyone understand how important it is that you're there at the table. Use empathy and not ego. One thing, again, to improve on that and maybe to start very small, and small steps are for mobile developers are reviews. Reviews are a very great resource. Everyone collects them, I think, in the App Store, Play Store, on your beta internally, via email. Use them more. But not just look at them, engage in them. For a couple of months, I think for a longer time, we've been doing that and collecting them, and we actually engage because you can help. You're the engineer. You know what's going on. Why not just tell them that you can? So just an example, not last week, a couple of weeks back, we had like an issue. We knew what it was. We fixed it. We rolled out an update. We could have left all those 1- and 2-star reviews there, but we didn't. We answered all of them, and the feeling you get, even as an engineer, when someone writes and appreciates that, oh my God, you shipped that update so fast, and they transform their review from 1 to 5-star, is just unpayable if you do that more often, and it helps you to learn a little bit more empathy. You can even take that one step further, and I know, I'm trying here. Customer support is also a great resource. You might think that's not your job, you shouldn't do that, but you can understand the experience of the customer much, much better if you try, at least try to look at what it is. You can see your users in the wild. You can interact with see how they interact with your product and sense their workflows and habits, and maybe even where you as a product or where you who implemented the feature fall short. And also, when they have troubles, I mean, it's your fault ultimately. You might think it isn't, but it doesn't matter. It's still your product. It's still your team. You own it. And if something needs fixing, don't hide behind it. Just fix it. Or get help from someone who can to help with building those connections. It's easy to fall into a trap and just code or design in a vacuum. It's not just you and your product anymore if it's already out. There are people actually using it. So doing support shows you who uses your product and how they do. It's not just you anymore. There's another example I wanted to give, what we do at Buffer. It's called Advocacy Days. And we just recently introduced it. I really like it. That means that every couple of weeks, everyone spends a day in the inbox, in our customer support inbox. And yeah, there's everything going on. There's not just mobile. There's paying. There's web issues. There's whatever issues you find, they are in there. And you can learn so much about it. Of course, you have help from a proper customer advocate who helps you if you have any questions. It's very simple. We all have products. We all have customer support. So it's a very simple and powerful tool. Learn empathy and purpose about your product, but also improve the teamwork you do with, even not just inside your own engineering team, also further out. So almost done. I'll leave you with this one, because I think we should all question our status quo a little bit in companies and our teams. I think we all should keep improving and think about what we can do better. Nothing is set in stone. We write on paper or even digitally now. And if we aren't the change we want to see, I think it won't probably happen. So build a happy team, live smarter, not harder, and be a no-ego doer. If you are interested, just wanted to leave that here. We're also hiring, not for mobile developers, but some of you want to check that out or approach me later. I've also got stickers if some of you might want them. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening.